In exercise 1-2, we will look at an overview of the Revit user interface. So the first place we're going to start is here in the File tab. The File tab allows you to open different files. Right above the File tab, up here, is the Quick Access Toolbar, QAT. The Quick Access Toolbar is customizable and allows you to pin different specific tools that you most regularly use. And here are the preset tools. If you would like to at any point customize your Quick Access Toolbar, you can toggle specific elements off and on, as well as continue to customize it here. When you select the Customize Quick Access Toolbar, you're able to either add or remove certain elements. Right below the Quick Access Toolbar, you'll notice that we have different tabs. There are multiple tabs throughout Revit, and essentially all of these tabs together is what will make up our ribbon. So this is called our ribbon, and by clicking on a tab, you can go to different tabs. So if we select our Architecture tab, you can see that there are words down here at the bottom that are subdivided. And so that is this is our Build section within our Architecture tab. This is our Circulation section within our Architecture tab. This is our Model section, Room and Area section, Openings, and so forth. So in order to use one of the tools within the actual tab, you can select on the tool. Anytime you see an arrow, that means that there's more hidden tools. So if I were to select wall, I could select then specifically which wall do I want, an architecture wall, a structural wall. So just remember that anytime you see a tab, a little black arrow, that means that there are more options available within that actual build tool, if you will. Also notice that anytime you hover over an element, it will talk to you, the program will tell you what it is. So in this case, it's a wall. The parentheses WA, that is actually the shortcut for wall. So if you type in WA, you'll be able to generate a wall. So I highly encourage you to explore and memorize and apply the shortcuts, because you then model faster. And it also allows you to then learn about further definitions of that actual wall. In addition to the Architecture tab, we will also be heavily involved in applying the Annotate tab, as well as when we have a tool selected or open, we also have the option to a green tab. So this is a Modify tab. So right now it's modifying window because I selected the Window tab. So if I hit Escape, you saw that green modification tab went away. So again, for example, if I hit the Wall tab, I have activated the tool to draw a wall. And now not only can I draw a wall, but I can modify a wall. And so that's why you see this green tab. If I hit Escape and don't complete the command, again, you see that green modification tab go away. The View tab is also an additional tab that we'll be looking at, but here you can control many things like your line weights, the different types of sections, draw a section, identify different views, generate schedules, so lots of different options that are related to graphics, presentations, creations, and sheet compositions. So eventually at the end, once you have something 3D modeled, you'll want to create a construction document sheet, which is a set of sheets that then can communicate your final design. You can also customize how the content within your tabs appear by clicking on this arrow. So you can click minimize again. So now you're noticing that it has the subcategories here, the create presentation, create the graphics presentation, create, etc. You can also select, in addition to minimize to tabs or minimize to panel titles, you can minimize to panel buttons. And you can also cycle through all of them. So by double clicking in this gray area, you saw that I cycled through all of them. So again, if you have cycled through all, which is the default, and you double click in this area, you can cycle through all the options. So now I've returned back to our default. You'll also notice that we have an additional tab, which is Enscape. And so here we have a plugin for Enscape. So anytime after add-ins, and so forth, tabs that, not excluding the modify tab, but anything after add-ins, tabs such as Enscape or potentially Illume tools or different types of products work with Revit. So whenever you have, it's called a plugin essentially, whenever you have a product that you're plugging into Revit to enhance the capabilities of Revit, then you'll see those tabs here. If we go to View and select User Interface, Interface is essentially what we are looking at right now, the entire canvas. This is what you'll always notice. The setup essentially will always look like this, and it has main components. Those examples of main components are your quick access toolbar, your ribbon. Here in this space we have a canvas, that's where we draw. Those are a few examples of our interface. So if we want to look at that user interface in more detail, we can select and open this button, and you can see that we can toggle elements off and on. For example, if I wanted to turn off my project browser, you'll notice that over here to the left, the project browser disappeared. If I wanted to bring back the project browser, no worries. I just go to View, User Interface, and bring back the project browser. So again, in View User Interface, you can control what you're seeing. So sometimes we're modeling and we might accidentally close an element. And then all of a sudden your interface looks different. So you're again able to go to User Face, bring back that element, and then we revert back to the original setup. So in Properties, you'll be able to find all of the information that's associated with the building element. For example, if I select architecture and I select the wall, all of a sudden I'm seeing the options for a generic 8-inch wall. So you'll see that it's telling me that this wall does not have a top constraint and it's a height of 20 feet. And furthermore, I can click on all these different properties to find a different type of wall and then find the information for that type of wall. So for example, if I select a different type of wall, the properties that are associated with this wall will now show up in here. So different information is associated with the element that you select. In addition to the Properties palette, we also have the Project Browser. And in the Project Browser, you're noticing that we have minus and plus sign. So if you click on either the minus or the plus sign, it will either hide or show all of the information. These, for example, are different views and drawings that we'll create throughout the semester, and there are also defaults that are set up for you. If you wanted to right-click within the kind of negative space, if you will, you can say either expand all, where you have everything opened and you can scroll down and see every single element, or you could say collapse all, and it just resets so that way you can focus on specifically what you're trying to look at. Additionally, down here at the bottom, we have something called the status bar. So to the bottom left of our interface, our status bar will always tell us what is kind of essentially the next step. So if I completely hit escape out of everything, so I know that I have no open commands, it's the status bar is telling me click to start, tab for alternatives, or control for adds, or shifts for unselects. So for example, if I select on a wall and an architecture wall, you're noticing that my green modification tab is open. And now it's saying click to enter wall at start point. So if I left click and start to pull, now it's telling me down here again at the bottom left, it was saying horizontal, space flips or orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. But what I want you just to note is that this down here is called the status bar, and it's just an option that helps you to understand what action you're in and what you might want to consider to move forward. Additionally, we have another bar up here called the options bar. So you'll also notice that the options bar is green. So for example, it's green because anytime you are in the modification tab, the modification tab is open, which again, the modification tab is open because I hit wall. I selected the wall button. So while I'm modifying that command, I can make additional changes to that wall here. I can change the wall depth and designate the wall depth, determine what level I want it to connect to, the location line. We'll get into all of these things a lot in later chapters, but this here is called your options bar, and the options bar is light green because it only shows up when you are in the modification tab. And this is a warning. So it says default wall setting will be changed. So we can go ahead and for now, close out of that warning and hit escape because we're not trying to actually draw a wall quite yet. Status bar, you'll also notice over here and to the right that there are different icons. So again, if you hover over an icon, you'll be able to see which icon is selected. So for example, if I toggle this icon, this one is select elements by face. So if I have a plain element, if I toggle that X off, then I'll be able to select elements by face. This is one of my favorite tools on the status bar. And if I wanted to turn it off, I could turn it off. So we'll use that one quite heavily, but there are other ones. Here you can drag elements on selection. So if you toggle this, now we won't be able to drag elements on selection because we turned it off, but you'll want to leave it on. Here we can also select pinned elements. So if we want to unpin anything, we can go ahead and unpin that. And then this allows you to select pinned elements in a view, which can be quite helpful. Right above our status bar, we have another bar called the view control bar. So here, if we select this element allows us to change and manipulate the scale. Right now it's at 1/8 equals a foot. Here we can determine our detail essentially level. So right now it's at coarse, which shows less information. We could change it to a medium level by selecting that, or a fine level. Fine level shows a higher level of detail than coarse. This element is associated with visual styles. So we can select our graphic styles to show our drawings in wireframe, hidden lines, shaded, consistent colors, textures, and realistic. This can be extremely helpful as we're modeling. We can further look at the graphic display options. through our tab where we can change transparency, add silhouettes, shadows, change our lines to be sketchy lines, control different lighting elements, more exposure. So we'll look at all of this later on. We can also, next to our different styles, we can also look at sun settings. So turn the sun path off or on, conduct a solar study, look at sun settings. We can turn our shadows off and on. So the little light is shadows on, little light off is shadows off. We can also crop views or do not crop views. And we can also hide the crop region. So when I toggled that, you saw that the line turned off and on. We can temporarily hide specific lines. And here we can reveal our hidden lines. We can control temporary view properties and hide analytical model and so forth. And here we can reveal constraints. So constraints can also limit the physically moving the model in various ways. In our View tab, we have different types of elevation markers. So if we click on that elevation marker, you'll see that we have activated the Modification tab. And if I click here, I can determine, do I want a building elevation or interior elevation? So within our view, we can control our elevation markers. You'll notice that now, as I move my mouse, I now can see an elevation marker. To close out, I'm going to hit Escape. Lastly, I went to the File button and clicked on Options, and I've opened up my Options tab. And within the Options tab, you have lots of plethora information about general, again, the user interface, different colors, graphics, if you will, hardware, file locations. So lots of different information to be able to do rendering, check spelling, and so forth. If we look again at within file locations, it's helpful because that can be a place where you can find different information or save different paths that you want to retrieve information from. So that can be, again, very helpful later on when it comes to bringing in different materials and so forth. And I will close that tab. And I now have gone to my project browser in Architecture, and I've opened up, you'll notice that this title sheet, which is called a View tab, this View tab here, L1-Architectural, is opened up. If I were to double click on L1-2, you'll see that I opened up a new View tab. So this is Level 1 View tab, this is Level 2 View tab. If I wanted to close Level 1 and then reopen Level 1, it opens. If I left click and drag, I can reposition the View tab. And I can also here in this drop-down menu cycle through all of the tabs. This can be helpful in the event that you have multiple tabs and you no longer see it. You can click on here and scroll all the way down to find your specific View tab.